Relax Time Radio with me, Paul, and
Mon.
Mon. Okay, so today is a special edition of Relax Time Radio. Special in that I'm getting my own back on Mon. Last week was it last week?
Yeah.
Last week Mon interviewed me, and this week I'm interviewing Mon. I think we promised that we would have a guest, but that couldn't happen. So we will have more. That's no problem. We will have guests from time to time, but today it's just me and Mon. But we decided to interview. Well, it was your idea, Mon. Interviews.
Yeah.
So what are we doing with the show? Yeah. So I'm interviewing Mon, and it's perfect because our show is all about travel, social impact, and entrepreneurism. And Mon is an expert in all three. So I'm going to be interviewing Mon about the subject of our show. When I say expert in all three, she's qualified to talk about all three, definitely.
Thank you.
So, well, you shrugged at expert, okay.
I mean,
right.
The funny part is that nowadays, like, let's just say there is a lockdown, a pandemic, and suddenly all of the people are experts in virology, like suddenly everyone is an expert in what's going on out there. So when you say like I'm an expert, I'm like like it's just
I know what you mean.
So
the word has been devalued.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Debased. We might even say, yeah, unfortunately. no one recognizes anybody else's expertise.
That's right.
Yeah. I love Noam Chomsky's example when he talks about this. He said, these days, like, people want to diss experts and don't want to credit any expertise. But imagine, I'm from England, a group in the pub in England, all women, could be women in there too, talking about, but football fans, talking about football. They all consider themselves experts, and they dig into the minutiae of, tactics, player purchases, player trades, who's playing, who's managing, how things are going, and anybody coming into that who wasn't well versed in football would be instantly dismissed. So, like, all of us do respect expertise. It just depends in, what area, right? When it comes to like divisive subjects like, politics and whatever, then we no longer respect experts.
Politics. Absolutely not.
But anyway, well, I'm not going to ask you about politics. No, I'm not. I definitely haven't prepared any. So, okay. So, yeah, we're just rambling on, aren't we? But apart from me interviewing Mon, we're also going to be playing, as usual, lots of newly released music, and one song that's still fairly new in the world, but it's getting older. It's Beabadoobee, Space Cadet, and that's going to be the first song of the show. So let's just get into it, shall we, Mon? What do you think? Okay, so well, I've decided to interview you about the three sort of subjects, like, separately. So first of all, travel. You've mentioned before on the show, but I know it's a lot, but I've forgotten exactly. So I'm just going to ask you an easy one. How many countries have you been to?
It's been 44 by now.
44. Oh, that's a nice number. One of my favorite numbers. That's quite a lot. How many countries are there in the world? Do you know?
So, that's a good question. I know there are 197 countries, but if you go by the registered regions and independent areas, or however you want to call them, I think we're going to go up to 210?
Well, yeah, I don't know. There's different answers I see. Google says worldometers. Worldometers is pretty good. It's probably not. Who knows? We can criticize Worldometers' expertise as well, but Worldometers says there's 195. Anyhow,
okay.
You were close, because I was going to guess For some reason, I thought it was more. For some reason, I thought it was like 270.
Right. No,
Anyway.
I'm not. So the reason why I know about, so I actually think it's 197, but the reason why it might be 195 is because in some registries, Myanmar is still not registered as an independent country. Because they're like, I think there are 4 or 6 countries in the world that don't register them. One is the US. And that's why they still call them Burma as well. And
Right.
and hence, if you look at pages that are under a US registration, they wouldn't count Myanmar with it. And it's the same with another country that I haven't in my mind right now. Yeah, but there are 2 countries where that's the case. So that's why I know 195, 197. But then there are
Yeah.
like these territory regions that are independent but not countries, but they are also registered. I think under the, I want to say under the UN, and I think we come up to like 210 if everything comes together, more or less.
Okay. So I don't know how long you've been traveling exactly, but let's just say, how much of the last 10 years have you spent traveling, would you say?
So I started 14 years ago, and I it's kind of like split into 2 different things. I lived abroad in 8 different countries, and so when I lived in those countries, I would also travel within the countries and try to explore them as much as I could. Um, so, and besides that, I would, when I was still living in Germany and I was having a job there, I would travel twice a year because we do have a lot, well, in comparison to other countries, we do have a lot of vacation time. So I was able to travel twice a year for 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and all my money would go into travel. So that was the only thing that I would basically save money for. And um, up until last year, September, I would travel 5.5 years full time.
Okay. So that's a lot of traveling. So um, let me ask you, have you changed because of traveling?
100%.
Do you think? 100%.
100%. Every single time I would go on a trip, I would come back different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel too when I travel as well. So in that case, and what experiences from traveling do you think have most impacted you or shaped who you've become?
Mm. I think it was especially those experiences where like those were kind of like surprising or challenging. I think the challenging ones were the ones that grew me the most, because I don't believe that we as individuals grow through comfort. I think we must go through challenges or through discomfort, and most often also through pain. So I have, obviously in 14 years, there is a whole list of bunch of things that happened to me while traveling, but also while in Germany. But the ones that while traveling, they were specifically challenging because I was always alone. So I traveled always solo, often in countries that I didn't speak the language. Often I wasn't able to, like in those situations, I wasn't able to have a connection to internet or whatever, because I was, for example, I was walking a lot. So by the time I was actually traveling, like as a backpacker, if you want to say it that way, I would walk 20, 30 kilometers a day with like a 25 kilogram or 20 kilogram backpack. And sometimes you just don't have internet, or you don't know where, like, there's a lot of challenges. And I think those challenging times, and mind you, by this time I was traveling so much, I did have all of my chronic diseases a lot still. And traveling with chronic illnesses that can actually take you completely out of your mind is a whole different level when you're trying to find your way around, and then have these chronic diseases, especially I have a nervous system disease, that literally you're in a different world when you have that, and often the pain is so crazy as well. So yeah, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. So I mean, to use the old cliche, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well,
Yeah.
I wonder why. What's the difference between the kind of experience? Because like I feel that as well. I'm someone, I like most human beings, I guess. Uh, by default, sort of comfort seeking. Although when I've been pushed out of comfort, like sometimes really extremely, and it can, like in the midst of things, they can be almost nightmares, and yet it's those experiences that are most available to draw strength from. It's strange. So sometimes I wonder, like, what's the difference between these kind of experiences and the like experiences that people have in the world, which which this is difficult to put, which don't necessarily make them stronger, which maybe oppress them, or like, for example, do you think that there's like some human limit? Do you think that you've faced a lot of challenges and adversity, but do you think that there's like, that at some point it could be too much and you could be broken if life was just too terrible, or we had less privilege or something or other? You don't think so?
So I do believe, so first of all, that's a really big thing, but I don't believe that anyone or anything could ever break me. Never, ever. And I have a quote which I always refer to, and every time something gets to me, I say this quote over and over again. And the quote goes something like this: a ship in the big ocean can only think if the water gets inside.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine there's a huge ocean, right? And the water pressure and everything is immense. And this tiny ship, whatever, can always float, right? So if we are the ship and we're in this huge ocean of noise, of adversity, of trauma, of happiness, of joy, of whatever it is, we can choose what we let in and what not. That is not to say it's not easy, but it's to say we have this choice. Now, you put in this privilege and oppression kind of thing. So here's the thing. You do not have the choice whether you're oppressed or not if we are talking about skin color, because it's an obvious, so you just can't choose if you're black or white, for example. Like, yeah, that's the thing. So I didn't choose my privilege, but I can choose how I use it, right? I can be an absolute, damn, I don't find a word for it. I can be an absolute bad person with it. I'm really trying. Or
You could, yeah. You could say jerk. I guess you could say jerk. That's allowable.
okay.
I could be a jerk, right?
I had a really good word, but I was like, oh no. Okay, you can be an absolute jerk, yeah. Or you can be someone like you and me who uses their privilege to help others rise above, right? So, and I wish that everyone would see that and that everyone would know that, but we're gonna get there. So, but here's the thing, right? So if you're, for example, a black person, then you can be as strong and as powerful and as protected as you are, but there will be probably storms coming where there's still going to come water in your ship, and you have to consistently get it out of your system, right? And so I think there's definitely a difference. Whereas I had the privilege to not have to even think about going somewhere and be, be attacked or be not getting in somewhere, or like, all of the daily struggles that, for example, Black people have. And I want to also point out, because it's something really important and people will probably think like, oh, you know, that's obvious. I, for example, have one of the strongest passports in the world. I am from Germany.
Oh, I think I lost you there. I don't know if you, yeah, I lost you there for a second.
Really?
Just some kind of delay, yeah. Well, you wouldn't have maybe, I don't know if it's my internet or your internet, but I kind of lost you a little bit.
Okay, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, so I just said I want to point out that my passport is one of the strongest in the world. It's usually in the top 5 somewhere. I'm from Germany, right? So for me to get into any country, we are usually in about 170, 175 countries where I just can fly to, show my passport, wave, and they're like, welcome. And this is crazy because my friend from Colombia, for example, whom I met in, where did I meet her? We traveled a lot, we traveled together, but anyways, we met, and in one of all of these countries, and she told me like the way, like the extensive visa applications she has to do, for example, to get to Thailand. That was crazy. That was insane to me. Like, I looked at her and she showed me all of that. It took her 3 months. She had to go to interviews, and because she was traveling the world as well by the time, so we met in 2 different countries actually, and she told me, and I was, you know, I mean, I never had to deal with that. So I think there's definitely like these things that we need to think about. But if you ask me, like, is there anything that could break me? No, because there is a huge list, if you ask me, for like all of the crimes in the world. And I would say probably 90% of these, I've checked them all. Not that I wanted to, but it's just, you know, I was probably one who was always the first to raise the hand for trouble. So,
I noticed you haven't stopped. I noticed you haven't stopped wearing yellow. You haven't stopped trying to draw attention.
Not that I want to draw attention. That's not it. You know, the yellow is.
I understand.
Different, but it works.
Okay. So I wonder if this question is meaningful to you. If in all your traveling, is what sticks in your memory most? Is it the people or the places or the elephants, or does it make any sense to separate things out like that? The experiences, the people, the places?
A little bit, yeah. So the elephants, obviously, they were really important because they got me to move here. I mean, they definitely draw attention to them, that's for sure. But you know, I think it's a lot for me, really what makes travel so important as well is, for me, it's the most valuable education you can ever have. I personally wish that the 15,000 euros that I put into my private university that I went to, because the thing that I wanted to study wasn't available in the public university in Germany by the time. I wish I would have taken this 15,000 euros, screw university, and just have traveled for a while, because I believe that everything that I learned in university was Googleable, to be honest. And also,
yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I just wish that people would take the time to just sit down. And the reason why I specifically travel alone is people feel they can approach me more. If I would be with a friend, they are not so open to talk to you, because it's always a little bit more intimidating to have 2 foreigners or 3, maybe they don't speak your language. But I often just went, and I go alone to eat out all the time. I usually don't eat inside when I travel. And I just take my plate and I look around, and if someone smiles at me from the local people, I just sit down and ask, can I eat with you? Sometimes they say no, but sometimes they just be like, well, this is awkward, but all right.
Remember, I don't know if you had a chance to listen, but I sent you an episode of the Happiness Lab
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
and they were talking about this study which had shown that, most people sort of intuitively think, or they think that if they sort of strike up conversations with Grab drivers, taxi drivers, or, people working in restaurants, staff here, there, or just random strangers wherever they find them, they think that it will be awkward and that they're better off leaving alone, being quiet. But the research shows that the opposite is true. The research shows that people are happier when they do just what you're talking about, and and feel like they've gained something, from the human interaction, and it's a multiple, it's so many things, isn't it? Because it's something that like I'm not given to by nature, but whenever I am feeling particularly ebullient, I kind of do that too, and it always feels great
Yeah.
to just reach out to strangers. Yeah.
Right. I tell you what, a lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I'm not. A lot of people think I'm super creative making connections. I'm not. But here's the thing. I'm an absolute overthinker. I analyze everything, like food choice every day is a struggle for me. But when it comes to that, my thinking goes like this. Okay, if I, like, what am I going to lose out on if I don't do this right now? Like the experience and the knowledge and just the moments and the memories that I can create, if I lose out on those things just because I overthink my own habitual being, and the amount of, I cannot tell you the amount of knowledge I gained, the amount of things I learned from all of these cultures, the people that I met is just insane. Sometimes I think I live in such like a kind of a Wonderland Disney kind of, like, I don't know, I cannot believe it. Like sometimes it feels like I live in movies, because the things that I experience are so crazy to me sometimes, and it feels not real, but it is, because I just put these things aside and let happen whatever is going to happen, right? And it's just amazing, to be honest. And it feels every single time awkward again. Every single time I go there, I think like, oh my God, Monique, you're just, this is the most stupid idea you can ever have. And I sit down and I'm like, what's that on your plate? Like just something simple.
Yeah.
Does it taste good? Like it looks weird, or like whatever. Like sometimes I'm just saying really stupid things, but it makes them laugh, and it just starts something, and
Yeah.
it works.
One of my wisest friends goes a step further. He'll ask strangers to help him to do small things. And I asked him about it once. He's one of the friendliest people I know, but he's also an introvert and quite shy. But he basically just will always introduce himself to strangers, even though he's an introvert. One-on-one, he's quite good like that. And I asked him one day, why do you ask people to do these small things for you that you could easily do for yourself? And he said, it makes them feel good to do something for someone.
Yep. Love it.
That's a wise dude.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a couple more questions in the travel section. Are there still places you dream of going to that you haven't been to yet?
Oh, all of them. So I have the whole world on my list, that's for sure. But the next one I 100% want to go is Japan and Bhutan.
Japan and Bhutan. Great. I've been to Japan. It's fantastic. I would like to go to Bhutan as well. Yeah. Bhutan is like there's a list. It's a bit like going to Yellowstone National Park or something. It's a limited, restricted, isn't it?
Yeah. I think they have, I'm not quite sure about the number. I think 3,000 tourists per month. And you can only go, so you have to pay a minimum of $250 per day on hotel and tour guides. And you cannot just wander around yourself to specific things. So to see like nature and this incredible like tiger temple on the side of the mountain, you have to definitely book local tour guides. But I think the concept is incredible, because the way there's also bad things about the country, you know, disadvantages about the country, how it works, and about the decisions. But that's in every country that we have. But they run, I think, right now on over 80% green electricity and everything. That they
Really?
produce for themselves, yeah, and they sell everything that they don't need. They sell to surrounding countries, and even better, I think 75% of their produce is organically grown by their own people, and then, yeah, so they don't import or anything unless they don't have.
Yeah. It's a very small country. You know, if you were to go to somewhere beautiful with such a rich culture and tradition and history as Bali, for example, like you know, you could see why Bhutan might do what they've done, because I think a lot of Balinese people would have liked their home to be better protected from mass tourism.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a trade-off, that's for sure. Okay, last question. All of this traveling and still much more traveling to do, but why have you decided to live in Chiang Mai for now?
So there's a lot of reasons. So I do want to make this my home base, and unless I find a different place that ticks more boxes off my list, which I'm not sure about, but so I have this list. I do like lists, as you can see. And over the years, I basically collected things that are non-negotiables for me to live with or at or where I am, basically. And so Chiang Mai is so far the only place that takes more than 85%. The only thing is here, the burning season, that kind of weighs it down. And the ocean that it's missing. So if we can transport Chiang Mai to the ocean, I'll be super happy about that. Or the other way around, ocean to Chiang Mai. But really it has, I personally find that the emerging of the cultures here is still balanced and really beautiful. You can find a lot of traditional Thai culture, but also modern Thai culture. You can find the Lana culture still, but also the modern, what the foreigners have brought in, more of this wellness, mindful kind of spiritual stuff, maybe from the Western world, where you can find here. I think it's a beautiful mixture. And did I mention the elephants?
Yes. Well, I think I introduced it sneakily, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about when did you, like, moving on to sort of the social impact side of things, when did you first volunteer or decide to sort of do something for a group of people, or, get involved in a social impact project?
I recently talked to my parents, and actually I just remembered all of that. So I was 6 years old when I
Six?
started. Six, yeah. When I started to join an environmental group in our hometown, and we would clean the river, we would clean the city off like trash, we would pick up trash. And we would also educate people on the street, basically. We would just stop them, and then, like Greenpeace kind of, but it wasn't Greenpeace. We had a really funny name. And so we would educate people with like this kid type of comics, that they shouldn't be littering, where to put the trash, how to recycle. And also we collected frogs and transport them over the road into the forest or into the big lakes, so they wouldn't be rolled over by cars. Because in Germany we have different, like in autumn there's a huge, what we call like frog wandering. So they wander from one place to the other, and then do their thing there too.
So was it like, so this was with your like schoolmates or something like that, was it?
Yeah, I it's so funny. I didn't know those people really. And again, it was just one of those, I walked home from school, I was 6, I saw them. I was like, oh, what you doing? And I was always this kind of kid, like I was just in love with nature. I would climb trees, and like I would, I pick leeches and whatever, and I studied bugs, and then like I'm this kind of, Yeah. And so, I mean, I lived in the city, but I was always like, my parents sometimes were trying to find me, but there were always three places to find me: the river, the forest, or some outdoor kind of place in between school and home. And so I saw them and I was asking them what they were doing and if they want a new member, and they're like, sure. And I just started helping them. And then my mom was waiting for me, so she walked all the way to school and found me picking trash in the river.
Cool. Um, so, wow, that's a really early start. Um, did you so did you think of, or have you actually like have you spent a lot of time working sort of as a professional? I don't even know what the word is. Professional charity worker or volunteer or volunteers. Have you worked for many NGOs or this kind of thing?
Right. You know, I've never done that as a main occupation or something, but I was always involved like as a type of activist, I would say. And I think a
Okay.
lot of people think activism needs to be like loud and sometimes violent, or going to protests or whatever, but that's not really true for most of the activists. And so, I mean, when I was 8, for example, I would have a list. Those lists, they started early. And the mayor of our city wanted to build a new shopping mall, but that was one of the places with all of the trees, and there were not many trees, and I didn't like them cut the trees. So I made a signature petition basically, and over a whole month, every day after school, I would just collect signatures against building this shopping mall. And I got almost 1,000 signatures, and then I went to the citizen office and I protested basically against the shopping mall. And they said, well, that's really cute. We will still build the shopping mall, but we're going to plant a whole lot of new trees just for you. And they did. Um, uh, I guess, yeah. So, but I think to answer your question, so I was always involved, but I was always doing this in my free time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always involved. So it was always around human rights a lot, and also animal environmental issues. So when I was a scuba dive instructor in Thailand, I would do a lot of things for sharks, for example, and the reefs in Thousand Thailand too.
I did scuba diving a long time ago in southern Thailand. It's really beautiful.
Yeah,
I would like to do a refresher course
yeah.
sometime.
And now it's good because the reefs are blooming again after lockdown.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
cool. Um, do you have a I mean, do you have a project that you'd like to do? I mean, would you envisage yourself sometime in the future starting your own project, environmental or social project?
Mm. So in my head, I have this idea that I want to build a educational system for all the refugees in the world, where basically, so right now in all of the refugee camps that are under the umbrella of the UN, they only are paid support for shelter and food. So all of their educational resources are basically organized within their own communities, basically, right? The problem
Mm.
with that is it's not about the quality, but there is no such a thing as that they can graduate with a certification, and hence they cannot apply for any type of scholarships in universities or high schools. And then basically that means that's how they still are trapped within those camps. They just can't get out, because the
Yeah,
only way that they would be able to leave the camp earlier, and so I had numbers in my mind, I think from 2014, the average time for someone in a refugee camp is between 17 and 26 years.
that's the average time. Wow.
Yes. And that to me is insane. We should not have people, I don't want to even say living because it's not alive, like existing in a camp somewhere not even acknowledged, like, you know, for 17 to 26 years. This to me is just insane. So in my mind, I want to build an educational system that is easy to roll out, because with internet, you know, like you can just go and put devices up with internet and they can enroll in these courses basically and have different age stages, and basically have a certified educational system for refugees where they can get graduate and certified to then apply for different stages, high school or universities. But that's obviously a challenge because it needs to be directed with governmental with governments and with different groups, educational systems, whatever. So it takes a lot of research, and yeah, but
That
that's
sounds like an amazing idea, because that's one of the, I mean, obviously, yeah, we would hope that instead of people living for decades in refugee camps, they would be, you know, we can't, like, it's not easy to resolve political problems. So if there are disputes between countries, warring factions, etc., there's just no timetable you can put on how quickly those will be resolved.
yeah,
But you would hope that people could be sort of resettled,
yeah,
you know, and very few are. And it sounds to me like, you know, if you had the kind of education system that you're talking about, it would be much easier to resettle people, because people would, for example, the kids would just be able to integrate into schools more easily. You would have to imagine. I mean, it sounds like a great idea.
yeah. And so my reason behind, or my thinking behind this is exactly what you just said. A lot of people, a lot of refugees losing their identity once they're rehomed in these camps basically, right? And so identity loss is an immense issue. It's just such an issue. Once they lose their identity and they don't have a legal document anymore, then the countries, they just don't want to take them in because of that. And you know, the thing is, with education, I think everything starts with education, right? And we need to just we need our education system all over the world needs to go through a whole evolution. And so I believe that if we can help with education within the camps, and they can get scholarships that would help them get visas that would then help them to at least be on a residential status. And so, you know, that's my whole thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like a fantastic idea. I mean, it's such a shame that the accident of the country you're born in shapes so much about your life. And for example, you know, even if you're able to attain a level of education, that in itself is still nowhere near as valuable as just the accident of birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what particular projects of interest or that stick out in your mind have you worked on in the past? And how many different countries have you worked with NGOs, or worked with sort of social impact projects?
Right. Ooh, that's a good question. I lived in 8 different countries, but in which ones did I? So I definitely, so Thailand, Spain, definitely Brazil. Where else? Well, in Germany for sure. I think in Australia, yeah, in Australia I also helped. But there were a few countries that I probably did some work online, like internationally. Well, one project that I'm still involved in for over 2.5 years now is Daughters Rising, just because I really, really believe in their mission. And it is very much similar to what I just explained with education. So they are basically helping minority and refugee women who are at high risk, basically, to be trafficked. because of no access to education, because of their status and because of their often no income or low income, or just the whole package basically. And they offer education, on-job training for tourism. They offer scholarships to universities, and they offer housing so they can be safe as well. So it's a whole thing basically. And I just really appreciate that. I have seen a lot of organizations that work in a huge way, but there's not a lot of coming to the people who actually need it. And this is very different with Daughters Rising. Everything that they do goes straight to the woman, and actually the women do it themselves. And that's the best thing that I really can imagine, because they really learn a lot from it. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting. When I was learning a little bit about this idea of trying to assess how different organizations make the donations that they get work. There's someone like a group of quite wealthy donors didn't know, wanted to answer this question. I think that's how the organization called 80,000 Hours got founded. Have you heard of this organization? They sort of like 80,000 Hours is they sort of attempt to analyze how effective different charities are.
Oh, yeah.
So it's complicated, because it's not simply a matter of does 100% of the money go to whatever. It depends on where they're working, what are they achieving. Anyways, it's interesting. I just came across it recently. 80,000 Hours, and there's another sort of sister organization. I forgot what it's called. Can't think of it right now. Never mind. All right. So yeah, you've mentioned that's your dream project. All right. Well, let's come on then to, so how much of the first two things we've talked about, travel, and then the social impact side of things, and what you'd like to do, especially with regards to your education project, how much of that do you think depends on the other thing we're going to talk about, which is entrepreneurism and your success, let's say your financial success? How do you think those are related?
So I used to really not like money, because when I grew up, it was like it was kind of looked down upon, because in East Germany, obviously there was not a lot of money, there was not a lot of anything. So people who had a lot of money, they were always looked at as greedy, as bad people, as not honest, because if you have a lot of money, you need to do something dishonest to get to the money, and all of these things. And there's still the belief that money doesn't grow on trees, you have to work 24/7 to get anything, then no one will appreciate you, and all of these kind of blurb. So I had to work a lot to dismantle these beliefs and to get to love money, not for the money itself, but for what it can do. And I feel like and I had this shift, took me like many years. Here's the thing, right? We can complain as much as we want about how the world works and how money works and how we need all of this money to change something, and that we rather have people that don't have money to change the world. That's all cool. We can complain about that, or we can just become just as rich as those people who don't do the things that we would like them to do, and then do them. So I just said, like, well, then I'm going to be one of those who's going to make all of the millions, and I'm going to spread them out, because I really don't know what to do with it. And I really believe that money just amplifies who you are. So if you're from all of your heart a really good person, then all of the money just makes you a better person. That's just what it is. Because really, like, if I have 5 million, I'd probably give 4.5 million away because I don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. I just wonder though, like, it popped into my head that, you know, what if you replaced money with sort of weapons, let's say, you know, like, obviously it makes a huge difference the kind of people who have the weapons, and the same is true of money, right? So although like weapons are less are obviously less neutral, you know, they're just made for destruction, although some are made for defense, but you know, they're made for destruction. Money it's got this neutral aspect to it, but given that it's so powerful in the world, um what am I trying to get at? Well, for example, you know, there's this when during the 2008 financial crisis, it came out that one of the things that had created that was that there used to be all of these projects in the world. There used to be a lot more sort of in the Western world, let's say, there used to be a lot more manufacturing. There was things like NASA and scientific endeavors, and it sort of was suggested that many of the top minds, too many of the top minds from universities, top mathematicians, top scientists, had gone into banking because the money was more, instead of going into other fields. And sort of, I just wonder, yeah, I'm confused about it. Like you've arrived at a decision about it, and I agree. People can do tremendous good with money. You know, I do understand. I understand that, but there's also the fact that it's a motivating factor. It's a goal for people who have all sorts of goals, and it's also It's also can be manipulative in the sense that, you know, I've sort of understood that. I've sort of seen documentaries which make me understand that sometimes there are well-meaning, ethical people in companies, but the fact is that they're bound to the quarterly reports, they're bound to the shareholders, and they sometimes take decisions that they wouldn't take if they were let's say, the sole owner of the company, because there's this profit motive driving everything. So it's like, for me, it's much more complicated, and the ways that money interacts and motivates people in the world is not so simple as to say, well, you know, if I have a lot of money, I can use it for good things. That may be true, but a lot of sort of the profit motive is sort of tied up with complicated systems that even good people can be corrupted by. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes. And here's the thing. So if we would talk about guns, then I would just become really good in shooting. And that's the point, right? I think a lot of people, they are resisting to use what we have. They want to change things that we cannot change. And so I think, like, I was the same. Like, don't get me wrong, I was for so long the same until even like a year and a half ago. I think a year and a half ago, I was at a point where I said, like, you know what? Why am I going to resist all of that? Because, like, I'm working really hard since I'm 13 years old, like extreme hard. I worked myself to death. And so the thing is, why am I doing this? Why, you know, I think we all need to look really deeply into our core values. And if you're like someone like me, everything that I'm trying to do, if it's outside of my core values, will fail. It will really fail. Like, I can show you that all over my life, and you will be like, interesting. Because if I would have known that earlier, I would have, you know, followed that better.
Okay, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm trying to butt in, but that's really, really interesting. I'll come back to that if I can remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is this, right? I think the people that you're talking about, and that's not being simple with all of this money, is because they either are not working in their core values or they don't even know what they are. And then, yes, they are totally manipulated by whatever money can do for them. And they may have good intentions, but they start out and suddenly they see all of the zeros behind this, the 1 or the 7 or whatever. And they're like, oh, what if I can have another 0 there, you know? And they're totally brainwashed. But here's the thing, again, I know all of my core values. I know if I don't stay within them, everything is going to get messed up. Like, I've been there so many times and I'm not trying that again. Again, this whole list, you know, that we checked off the box. And so here's the thing. Now that I'm building my company and I'm building it up, I've gone through so many rounds already of trying different things, the marketing, nothing worked if I've done it out of my values, out of my beliefs, out of what feels true to me. And it's usually very different from what all of these gurus trying to tell you. And so it's going to be the same for me with money, because I know who I am. I know how I operate. And if I go outside of my values with the money, I'm either going to lose it all, or it's going to have a tremendous impact on something. And I don't want either of that. So I'm better staying within my values. And because I know it and I learned the lesson a few times with really hard punches in my face, I better stay there.
I think I agree with you like almost entirely on that. I think the one thing on my mind is like it crossed, because something profoundly affected me once, and I sort of had what you just said sounded very, very familiar to an experience I had, which was that, you know, you said core values. I sort of thought of it as my path, and I sort of felt like, you know, we're following our core values, or we're sticking to those, and I'm following my path, and what comes to me on my path comes to me on my path. Mm-hmm. You know, I pursue it as best I can. But do you think like it's possible that there are people for whose core values and whose path sort of cuts out the idea of thinking too much about money? Maybe it's okay for you, but maybe for some people it isn't. It is. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make much sense. You're like, there might be some people whose path sort of doesn't ever take them near money.
Right. And yes, 100%. I do believe that money doesn't need to, like, here's the thing. My core value is not money. My core values are impact, energy, and definitely truth. Those 3 things. If I don't stay in my energy and have toxic people around, and I'm not gonna get rid of not gonna make sure I stay away from them or whatever, and I'm gonna have migraines, or I'm gonna get seizures, or I'm gonna, you know, get neuralgia, or like whatever it is. If I don't work for my impact, and that's the overall project I just talked about, or if I'm not gonna make sure I do everything that I can to help people with the project that we are working together on, or Daughters Rising, or the elephants, for example, then I know exactly if I don't do that, I will fall out of my way, basically. It's just who I am. And the truth is the same. If I don't say what I think, if I don't stand in my truth, even though it sometimes scares the hell out of me to say that, because I usually, you know, say that on very public channels, and I get a lot of backlash for it often, and it really scares me because it's not fun. But if I don't say it and I don't stand in the truth, I also know, like, all right, I'm gonna just, you know, like, something is gonna get in my way. So the money is not something in my core value, but I know that I need money as a vehicle to fulfill my truth and my impact, or else I'm gonna fall off the path. So
yeah,
you know?
Sounds reasonable. I got you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we've talked for almost an hour. I've got one last question. My last question, I think, is going to be, you sort of like doing several solo projects. You're doing a podcast, you're writing a book, but you're still doing some work with that organization. How is that for you? The difference between working within an organization, would you like to, or working on your own? Do you have a preference, or you like both?
I believe I need both. I would never want to have a business with someone together unless I think it would be a future partner, like a life partner. So I don't believe a business partner would be good for me. I know myself. So, but if I had a partner, I believe that we can have two separate individual lives and still emerge in each other's businesses, because I'm not going to have someone with a job because it's very important that you have some understanding, but it would be kind of merged and not like anyways. So I definitely need to work alone. But I 100% believe in community and in support. And I mean, you've seen online, we talk about it a lot. I believe I should be using my privilege for better things than me receiving it. So, and that's really what I'm trying to do, so, and I can't do it.
I suppose if you're, if you get to do one day your refugee education project, that could be a big project with a lot of people. I mean, you might be running it or part of it, but that would be different from what we're talking about. That would be a very big project.
Yeah.
With a big team,
I honestly, in my head, I'm only going to be the one who is training everyone on how to use it and empower everyone to implement it themselves, So it's going to be a worldwide thing. Yeah. Because I'm not the one, like, I don't want to be in the center of things. People think I am, but I just don't, like, it's not in my interest. I'm just very decisive and give directions because I know how things roll pretty good. I mean, it's just how I've done things forever. So I just say what I think like we should be doing and give directions. I don't ask for opinions because sometimes I don't care. That's just what it is, truly. And I say, this is how we do it. This is how it's going to be done. This is what and when we do it. And then if it's done, I can just package it up and empower other people to do it. And how they do it then, I just want to make sure they can rise up, like that's really all I want. So.
Okay, super. Well, I think we're definitely going to have to leave it there. Otherwise, there's going to be no time at all for music. Yeah. So thanks, Mon. That was enlightening, interesting stuff. There you go. Paul interviews Mon. Part 1. Part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1, 2, and 3 all there.
Yeah.
Maybe we can make 3 weeks of radio shows out of this.
Yeah, we should keep interviewing each other for a few weeks. I think that's going to be a lot of things coming out.
I don't know. I might have already told you everything I know. I don't know much. I might have already told you everything. There might not be anything else left to tell.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's say goodbye, shall we? Thanks everybody so much for joining us, Mon and I. It's been Relax Time Radio, 93.25 FM on Radio Thailand, Chiang Mai. Hope you enjoyed the music we played. Hope you enjoyed our conversation, and see you next time. Just before we actually go, Tom is here tomorrow with the Legal Matters show. Kun Tom Charan Road Kasesu. Okay. I'll see you on wait a second. I'll see you on Sunday with DJ Nan for the Jazz and Blues and Soul Show. And we'll be back next week. Bye.
Yep. See you then.